It began on a freezing morning in Helsinki, the kind of cold that bites through gloves and silences even the most talkative travelers. Inside Terminal 2, passengers rushed past each other, quiet, distant, focused on their own worlds. Among them was Lani, a Filipino woman with a small suitcase and a heart full of hope. She had just landed in Finland, the country she'd dreamed of working in. Her English was fluent, her smile bright, but her eyes held the nervousness of someone stepping into the unknown. At the arrival gate, she noticed something unusual. People barely made eye contact. No small talk, no smiles, just silence. When she tried to greet an elderly Finnish woman beside her, the woman only nodded and looked away. It wasn't rudeness. It was just the Finnish way. Calm, distant, reserved. But when Lani reached the immigration counter, everything changed. The officer, tall and serious, asked her routine questions. Then, as she handed over her papers, he noticed the tremble in her hands. Instead of ignoring it, Lani smiled shyly and whispered, "Sorry, sir, I'm just a bit nervous. First time in Finland." For a moment the officer paused, surprised by the warmth in her voice. Then, almost involuntarily, he smiled back. "Welcome to Finland," he said softly. It was a small exchange, barely a few seconds, but for everyone watching in line, it was something rare, warmth cutting through pine taikorin. Cold. What none of them knew was that this brief moment would be the start of a story that would soon ripple across the country. How one Filipino's kindness began melting the silence of Finland. A few days later, Lani started her new job at a public hospital in Espoo, just outside Helsinki. The building was spotless, organized and quiet, almost too quiet. Nurses moved like shadows down the white corridors, speaking only when necessary. Patients rarely talked, and when they did it was short, polite, and distant. Lani's first shift began in the elderly care ward. Her Finnish was still basic, so she relied on English and gestures. Her first patient was Madi, a retired teacher who hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. The nurses said he barely smiled, not because he was unkind, but because that was just how Finnish elders often were, reserved, private, stoic. When Lani entered his room, she didn't rush into medical routines. Instead, she gently touched his hand and said, "Good morning, Mr. Madi. My name is Lani. I'll be taking care of you today." Her voice carried something that couldn't be translated. Warmth. She fluffed his pillow, cracked a small joke about the weather, and even hummed a Tagalog lullaby while preparing his breakfast tray. By the end of the week, something remarkable happened. Madi smiled. The head nurse, who had worked there for 20 years, couldn't believe it. "He hasn't smiled like that since his wife passed away," she whispered. Soon the other nurses began watching how Lani spoke, how she comforted people with kindness instead of cold professionalism. And, quietly, without realizing it, they started copying her tone. Softer, warmer, more human. What started as one Filipino nurse's habit of care was beginning to shift the atmosphere of an entire ward. The plane landed in Helsinki, and Liza's first breath of Finnish air was a shock, crisp, clean, and freezing. The world outside was painted in white and gray, a stark contrast to Cebu's vibrant colors. The people moved with quiet efficiency, their faces serious and voices low. The silence was the most jarring thing of all. Her first day at the hospital was intimidating, modern, sterile, and eerily quiet. Nurses and doctors moved like ghosts, speaking in hushed tones. There were no friendly greetings, no casual chatter. Liza, used to a buzzing hospital, felt like an outsider. The routines were rigid, patient interactions brief and impersonal. It felt like they were treating the illness, not the person. For Liza, who believed a kind word was as important as any medicine, this was a profound culture shock. She ate lunch alone, missing the camaraderie of Cebu. At night, she looked out at the snow-covered city and questioned her decision. Was she cut out for this? Could she ever adapt? The silence pressed in, threatening to dim her spirit. But Liza resolved not to let it. Liza knew she couldn't continue feeling invisible. Assigned to care for Mr. Virtanen, a grumpy, silent patient, she decided to try something different. Instead of leaving after her duties, she sat beside him and began to talk, not about his illness, but about her home in Cebu. She described the warm sea, the taste of fresh fish, the sound of children playing. Mr. Vertinen didn't respond, but his grip on his blanket loosened. Every day, she brought a piece of her world into his sterile room. Her approach was foreign to the hospital's culture. Colleagues watched with curiosity as she spent extra time listening to patients, holding hands, humming lullabies. She learned a few Finnish words and greeted everyone with a bright smile. Her warmth was a persistent flame in the cool, efficient environment. This was the Filipino way, caring for the spirit as much as the body. Liza saw her patients as people, not case numbers. Empathy wasn't a professional tool, it was her instinct. She treated everyone as she would her own family, with patience, tenderness, and an open heart. Slowly, her kindness began to ripple through the ward. Patients responded, and even her colleagues started to notice. Liza was changing the hospital, one small act at a time. She was herself, and that made all the difference. The turning point began with Mr. Vertinen. One day, as Liza told him about a festival in her village, he looked at her for the first time, a single tear rolling down his cheek. Soon after, a senior nurse told Liza that Mr. Vertinen spoke to his daughter for the first time in months, mentioning the girl from the sunny island. Respect for Liza grew. Her simple acts of kindness created ripples. Patients smiled when they saw her. An elderly woman asked Liza to sing again. A younger nurse asked to learn the song, a bridge between two worlds. Colleagues saw that Liza's methods, though unconventional, were effective. Difficult patients became calm with her. Nurses began asking for her advice. "How did you get Mrs. Hakkinen to eat?" Liza replied. "I asked about her grandchildren first." The perspective shifted. See the person, then the patient. The ward's atmosphere changed. Silence was now punctuated by gentle conversation and laughter. Colleagues greeted Liza warmly, joining her for coffee and asking about her life. They were becoming a team. Liza was no longer the outsider. She was a valued member, teaching them that compassion was a strength. The hospital was warming up, one smile at a time. Liza's light was contagious. One brutal January night, a blizzard struck and the hospital's heating failed. The temperature plummeted, patients began to shiver. While others focused on the technical problem, Liza focused on the human one. She saw fear in the patient's eyes and knew cold was as much psychological as physical. Liza gathered the nurses. "We need to keep them warm and keep their spirits up." Vulnerable patients were moved into one large room to conserve heat. Liza started a sing-along, her voice breaking the tension. Soon, nurses and patients joined in, singing Finnish songs and carols. The music filled the room, an antidote to the cold and fear. Liza moved from bed to bed, rubbing hands, telling stories, making jokes. She turned a crisis into an opportunity for connection. By morning, the room was filled not with shivering patients, but with a community. They had faced the cold together. That night, Liza didn't just keep people warm. She showed that in the darkest times, human compassion is the greatest source of heat. The hospital would never forget it. Months later, a severe flu outbreak overwhelmed the hospital. Wards were full, staff exhausted, fear everywhere. The personal touch seemed like a luxury they couldn't afford. But Liza knew this was when it mattered most. She volunteered for the busiest ward, the epicenter of the outbreak. Amid the chaos, she paused to look patients in the eye, place a gloved hand on a shoulder and say, "We are here with you. You are not alone." Her calm presence steadied everyone. She organized the younger nurses, teaching them to cluster care, efficient but still humane. "When you go in, don't just check the IV," she said. "Ask if they need water, fluff their pillow, tell them they're doing a good job fighting." 10 extra seconds, but it changes everything. Liza led by example, never showing her own fatigue. She became the emotional anchor for patients and staff. Recovery rates on her ward were higher. Doctors took note. Patients under Liza's care had a stronger will to live. Her compassionate approach was now seen as critical to effective care. During the worst crisis in years, Liza proved empathy was a life-saving intervention. She was a beacon of hope. Stories of Liza Mendoza's extraordinary work spread beyond the hospital. Patients told families about the Filipino nurse who sang to them. Colleagues shared tales of her leadership during the heating crisis and flu outbreak. The media picked up the story. Liza became the Nightingale of Finland. The recognition reached the highest levels of government. One day, Liza received an invitation to the presidential palace. She was to be awarded the National Order of the White Rose for her exceptional contributions. The first nurse, and the first Filipino, to receive such an honor. At the ceremony, the president spoke of her spirit and the warmth she brought to Finland. Liza's influence sparked a national conversation. Hospitals began to reevaluate their practices, implementing training in compassionate care. The Liza method became a model, seeing the whole person. Liza Mendoza hadn't just done her job, she started a movement. After years in Finland, Liza felt a pull to return home. Her mission was complete. She had provided for her family and given a gift she never expected. She left Finland a celebrated hero, her departure marked by tearful goodbyes. Back in Cebu, she became a teacher at a local nursing college. She shared her story, teaching not just anatomy, but the lessons she learned in Helsinki. A smile can be the most powerful medicine, she told her students. Listening is a sacred act. Your greatest tool will always be your own heart. No matter where you go, your ability to connect is your true superpower. That is what makes you a healer. Liza planted the seeds of her legacy in the next generation. Her story reminds us, true greatness is measured in moments of connection and acts of kindness. Liza's legacy lives on, a testament that one compassionate heart can warm the world.